Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into an extraordinary life, someone who fundamentally reshaped cinema. You've brought us these fascinating sources on Luchino Visconti, and well, we're ready to really get into them together.
He's such a compelling figure.
Absolutely. Prepare yourself because we're talking about a true cinematic titan. I mean, the name alone, Luchino Visconti di Madrone, Count of Lenotte Pozzolo, it just drips with history, power, intrigue, doesn't it?
It really does. It sets the stage immediately.
And he wasn't just a director, that's the thing. He was, a genuine polymath, an aristocrat, born into unbelievable privilege, but also a dedicated man of the theater, a celebrated opera director. It makes him one of the most multifaceted and, frankly, contradictory figures in world cinema.
That's the key word, isn't it? Contradictory.
It really is. What strikes me right away looking through these sources is how he didn't just sort of show these contradictions. He actively mined them for dramatic power. It's incredible.
Yeah, he embraced the tension.
Totally. His work is defined by this almost impossible tightrope walk. On one side, you get this stark, almost brutal realism, poverty, working class struggles, just captured with this unflinching honesty that must have shocked people.
Especially at the time.
Right. And then on the other hand, there's this breathtaking, opulent grandeur, aristocracy, decadence, this kind of melancholic beauty. It's a tension that just runs through his whole career like an internal struggle playing out on screen. It's captivating.
And utterly unique to him, really.
To give you a taste of that range, I mean, this is the filmmaker who gave us Ossessione in 1943.
The foundational film.
Often called the very first Italian neorealist film. And then 20 years later, he creates The Leopard, 1963, a huge, lavish historical epic about the decline of Sicilian nobility.
It's almost whiplash, stylistically.
It's genuinely hard to believe they came from the same person, the same artistic vision, but they did. So our mission today is to really unpack this extraordinary life, trace his career, understand his unique style, his politics.
Which are fascinating in themselves.
Absolutely. His biggest films and ultimately the undeniable lasting impact he had on cinema. So let's dive in.
And it's exactly those contradictions, those dualities you mentioned that are so deeply rooted in his personal history.
Right.
It wasn't just an artistic choice for him. It feels almost existential.
Right.
To really get the power of his films, you have to start with the world that made him.
Yeah.
And it's that unique mix, the aristocrat's eye, the theater director's sense of drama, the opera master's grand vision that gave him this cinematic toolkit nobody else really had.
That makes perfect sense, from framing a face to handling a massive ballroom scene.
Precisely.
Okay, that is the perfect place to start. Let's go back to the beginning. Luchino Visconti, born in Milan in 1906, and like you said, that full name, Luchino Visconti di Madrone, Count of Lenotte Pozzolo, it tells a story.
It really does.
He wasn't just wealthy. He came from one of Italy's oldest, most distinguished, incredibly rich aristocratic families. We're talking an upbringing just steeped in privilege, tradition, Italian history.
Absolutely. His early life was lived quite literally inside grand ancestral palaces, surrounded by art, music, culture from day one.
Wow.
His mother, Carla Erba, she was very cultivated, connected to the artistic elite. The Guccini, publishers, theater people.
Okay.
And his father, Giuseppe Visconti di Madrone, kept up the ties with the old nobility. So Luchino was constantly exposed to the rituals, the grandeur of that, fading world.
So opera, literature, high theater, it was just his childhood environment.
Exactly. It was practically ingrained in his artistic DNA. This background, this constant immersion in refinement, luxury, it gave him this incredible firsthand understanding of that world.
An insider's view.
An insider's view that he would later depict, dissect, critique with a depth only an insider could manage.
It really sets up such a fascinating, almost ironic contrast, doesn't it? Because despite this incredibly privileged upbringing, this immersion in high society, Visconti was definitely not a passive aristocrat.
Not at all.
He wasn't just content with his status. He became deeply, almost urgently interested in the modern world, particularly Marxist ideas, socialist thought.
And this is where his story gets so unique, so compelling. This tension, the aristocratic background, the conservatism, the hierarchy, and then his socialist ideals, which challenged all of that.
Fundamentally.
It wasn't just a personal quirk. It became a fundamental driving force in his cinema. It gave him this unique dual perspective on class.
He could see both sides.
Exactly. He could portray the opulent world he knew intimately, its nuances, its psychology, its hidden melancholies with an insider's eye. But at the same time, he could analyze its inequalities, its inevitable decline, through a Marxist lens.
That intellectual and emotional split.
It's what makes his work so rich, so multifaceted, and so deeply empathetic, really, to all levels of society. Few artists manage to embody and explore that kind of internal contradiction so powerfully.
So he's this aristocratic intellectual with this burning social conscience. How does that translate into becoming a filmmaker?
The journey takes him away from Milan, right?
Yeah.
To Paris in the 30s. Crucial apprenticeship.
That's right. A really formative period. He goes to Paris and works as an assistant to Jean Renoir.
Wow. Renoir, one of the all-time greats of French cinema.
Absolutely. And Renoir's influence on Visconti, you just can't overstate it. It wasn't just about technique, camera angles, editing. It was more philosophical.
How so?
Renoir's deep humanism, his political engagement with ordinary people's struggles, his strong sense of realism, all of that seeped into Visconti's artistic consciousness. He was learning how to tell stories with authenticity, empathy, how to ground big themes in everyday grit.
So Paris was the bridge. It combined his sort of inherent artistic sensibility from his upbringing.
Yeah, honed by high culture.
With Renoir's more pragmatic, socially aware, humanistic approach, it sounds like the perfect convergence of influences, paving the way for his debut. Absolutely. It was the crucible where his artistic identity really solidified. He took the aesthetic richness, the theatrical understanding he grew up with, and consciously married it to this commitment to observing and portraying social realities, especially the working class.
And that fusion just explodes onto the Italian scene.
Completely changing its course.
And what an explosion. Let's talk about the birth of Italian Neorealism, his film Ossessione, 1943, right in the middle of World War II. A critical, turbulent time for Italy. War, fascism, huge societal shifts, ripe for a cinematic revolution.
Indeed. And to really grasp the impact, the sheer audacity of Ossessione, you have to understand what Italian cinema was like then. Under fascism, it was almost entirely dictated by Mussolini's regime.
Right, the white telephone films.
Exactly. Glamorous, escapist melodramas, opulent sets, idealized lives, deliberate propaganda, really, presenting the sanitized, prosperous Italy, hiding the hardship, the rationing, the political turmoil.
So Ossessione arrives like a bomb, a direct challenge to that whole system.
A stark repudiation of cinematic lies.
Which makes it such a radical breakthrough. It was an unauthorized adaptation of James M. Cain's gritty American novel, The Postman Always Rings Twice. Just the premise, lust, murder was pushing boundaries in that society?
It absolutely broke every convention. Visconti made these deliberate, revolutionary choices. He insisted on real locations, took the camera out of the sterile studios into dusty roadside taverns, gas stations, real Italian towns.
Grounding it in reality.
And the characters weren't polished ideals. They were unpolished, ordinary people. Flawed, struggling, deeply human. And the film did not shy away from raw, carnal lust, the grim realities of poverty, the sweat and grime of working life, violence, moral compromise.
Things fascist cinema pretended didn't exist.
Exactly. It was a stark, unflinching look at that side of Italy, a completely new visual and thematic language for audiences.
So you can imagine it didn't just shock audiences, it sent seismic waves. Mussolini's censors hated it, famously called it immoral, depraved.
Oh, yeah. There are stories, like you see in the sources, that Mussolini's own son, Vittorio, involved in film, was so enraged he tried to destroy the negative.
Wow, a visceral reaction to truth. Yet, for critics, film historians, Ossessione undeniably marked the birth of Italian Neorealism. Why was this film, its grit, its subject matter, so revolutionary, so unsettling, really moment zero for a new cinema?
Well, first, the sheer audacity of the subject. Adultery, murder, working class, no moralizing, no romanticizing. It was a direct affront to the fascist ideal of family-state purity.
Okay.
But beyond the theme, the technique was just as revolutionary. Those long takes you mentioned, like Renoir. In fascist films, you'd get rapid artificial cuts to maintain that sanitized image, control the narrative.
Right.
Visconti embraced these extended, unedited sequences. It wasn't just aesthetic, it was political. Forcing the audience to linger on the raw truth, feel the uncomfortable weight of choices without editorial meddling. The camera became an observer, not a propagandist.
A mirror, not a fantasy.
Precisely. For people used to escapism, seeing aspects of their own society reflected with such raw truth was deeply uncomfortable for the authorities, but incredibly powerful for those who recognized it. It forced a confrontation that made it deeply unsettling.
And this pioneering approach, capturing ordinary lives with documentary-like authenticity, wasn't just a flash in the pan. It laid the foundation for a global movement. We connect Ossessione directly to films like Rossellini's Rome, Open City, De Sica's Bicycle Thieves. Visconti was pivotal.
Absolutely. A total paradigm shift. Ossessione was the blueprint. Rossellini took shooting on location with non-pros, but applied it to the immediate post-war struggle in Rome, open city, even starker, more urgent. De Sica in Bicycle Thieves used similar techniques for post-war economic hardship, moral dilemmas, elevating a simple struggle into universal tragedy. Neorealism's commitment to social reality, human focus, innovative techniques, it still influences filmmakers globally today. It taught cinema a new language of truth, empathy over artifice.
A truly powerful legacy. And remarkably, after the war, Visconti didn't just rest there. He actually deepened his commitment to neorealism, pushed its boundaries. 1948, La Terra Trema, The Earth Trembles, based on Verga's novel about Sicilian fishermen, an uncompromising testament.
This film wasn't just neorealism, it was, like you said, more rigorous, purer, almost ascetic. He made some truly striking, frankly audacious choices during production, emphasizing immersive authenticity to an almost unheard of degree, an act of profound artistic and political commitment.
I mean, the production details are incredible, shot entirely on location in Ossessione, a Sicilian fishing village. Unparalleled authenticity right there.
Just visually stunning and real.
Then the cast only non-professional actors, actual fishermen, villagers, their families, essentially living their lives on screen, blurring fiction and documentary until they almost disappear.
It's incredibly immersive.
And then the dialogue entirely in authentic Sicilian dialect, making it almost incomprehensible to many Italians up north, prioritizing realism over accessibility in a way that's still rare today.
That decision, using Sicilian dialect with minimal concessions, really underlines that this was neorealism at its purest, almost ethnographic, a profound commitment to their lived experience, capturing the authentic textures, sounds, even if it alienated a wider audience.
Truth over commercial viability.
A rare and admirable stance. And it wasn't just sound, it was shot like a documentary. Long takes, minimal edits, deep focus on the rhythms of daily life, mending nets, the catch, haggling. It utterly immersed you in their struggle.
So La Terra Trema wasn't just portraying hardship, it was more. Described as a powerful study of exploitation, poverty, the crushing weight of social structures. Almost Visconti's Marxist manifesto, right? Addressing class struggle, oppression directly.
That's a crucial description. It wasn't just documenting, it was interpreting through a specific socio-political lens. Laying bare the economic mechanisms trapping these fishermen in poverty, their futile attempts to break free from wholesalers. A rigged market.
With an unflinching gaze.
Showing how individual courage often buckles under systemic injustice. A profound statement about the human cost of capitalism, societal inequalities, delivered with the stark honesty of a political treatise.
And yet, despite critical praise, it wasn't commercially successful. Struggled to find an audience beyond the elites. What does that tell us about the appetite for pure realism versus more accessible stories? Was there a tension between his integrity and his desire for social impact? It solidified his reputation, sure, but maybe at a cost.
That's an excellent point. It tells us a lot about the tension in radical art. Critics lauded its integrity, its groundbreaking nature, but the general public often wants narrative gratification, escapism, or at least a more easily accessible story.
The very things that made it pure.
The dialect, non-prose, stark portrayal, length, made it challenging for mainstream audiences. It highlights that artistic purity, while invaluable for discourse and future influence, doesn't always mean immediate box office or broad appeal. It can limit the direct reach of the message.
But his reputation as uncompromising was cemented.
Undeniably, marking him as a filmmaker of vision, depth, a provocateur willing to sacrifice popular appeal for unvarnished truth.
A filmmaker of uncompromising vision who, by the way, wasn't just a filmmaker. The sources stress he was also a celebrated opera and theater director, immersed in those worlds. His love for opera, Verdi, Wagner, profoundly shaped his film's visual style, their narrative structure.
This is crucial for understanding his evolution, that polymath quality again. The operatic influence began subtly, then overtly seeping into his cinematic language. Think about opera's grand staging, choreographed crowds, dramatic pacing building to crescendos, visual splendor costumes, sets.
Elements second nature to him.
Exactly, from his opera work. He knew how to command large productions, use music and spectacle, not just as background, but to convey deep emotion, thematic weight, orchestrate complex narratives with a sense of sweeping destiny. It was a natural extension of his background, adapted to cinema, transforming it.
And you see early signs of this transition. Early 50s, his cinema subtly shifts from strict neorealism, Bellissima, 1951, with Anna Magnani, great example. combines neorealist sensibility, working-class mother, trying to get her daughter into films with overt, almost theatrical melodrama. Magnani's performance, the emotional pitch. You feel that operatic drama emerging, even in a contemporary setting.
Exactly. Not an abrupt break, but gradual evolution. Still rooted in observing everyday life, ordinary struggles, but amplifying the emotional stakes. Exploring passions, ambitions, disappointings with a heightened drama, leaning into the theatrical, the operatic. The realism is there, but infused with a grander emotional scope.
And it was this growing fascination, maybe a subconscious pull from his own upbringing, that drew him from Sicilian streets to crumbling palace ballrooms, setting the stage for a dramatic yet logical shift, leading to his full embrace of a more elaborate, visually sumptuous style by the late 50s, early 60s. His new fascination wasn't fishermen's struggles, but the decline of aristocracy, historical transitions, the decadence of the ruling class. Almost a return to his roots, the world he was born into, but observed with a critical, melancholic, more complex lens now, right?
Absolutely, a brilliant evolution. This shift wasn't rejecting his earlier politics. It was a deeper, more sophisticated evolution, using grandeur, opulence, spectacle, not to uncritically celebrate the aristocracy, but to critically examine its downfall, its fading against modernity, social change.
Using their own world to critique it.
Precisely. Depicting the lavishness, rituals, torments, decay, he explored historical forces, societal transformation from a different angle. He understood that sometimes, to critique something, grasp its passing, you must first comprehend, even meticulously reproduce its beauty, its tragedy, its complexity. The visual splendor becomes a poignant counterpoint to themes of loss, transition, time's march, using the aesthetic language of the class he was critiquing to deliver the critique.
And all these threads, aristocracy, Marxism, theater, opera, fascination with decline, they all converge in what's widely seen as his masterpiece, Il Gattopardo, The Leopard, 1963. Based on Lampedusa's novel, itself a reflection on aristocratic lineage.
A poignant connection there.
And the scale is immense. Star-studded international cast, Burt Lancaster, iconic as the Prince, Claudia Cardinale, Alain Delon.
It really is a monumental achievement, a synthesis of everything. Set in 19th century Sicily during the Risorgimento, that incredibly tumultuous, transformative period in Italian history.
Right.
The unification.
Right.
The film uses this sprawling historical backdrop to explore vast universal themes, but always through an intensely personal lens.
For those maybe less familiar, the Risorgimento was pivotal. Mid-19th century, consolidating disparate states into a unified Italy. Chaotic, often bloody, complex, political upheaval, social realignment, huge cultural change.
Changed the face of Italy forever.
So the film, like the period, is both epic and profoundly intimate. Depicts sweeping historical changes, but through individual experience. Meditating on mortality, power, loyalty, the decline of a whole way of life.
Yes, that duality is its heart, its enduring power. An intimate portrait of Prince Fabrizio Cellini the Leopard and his family as their world power values are swept away by history, modernity. The prince, intelligent, melancholic, understands that for things to remain the same, everything must change.
A famous line.
He sees his class, traditions, identity fading.
Yeah.
But through their personal story, the prince's compromises, his nephew Tancredi's opportunism, Angelica's rise, the film reflects on political transformation, power, change's bittersweet inevitability, the longing for beauty in a fleeting world. It powerfully represents Visconti's dual identity. An aristocrat chronicling his own class's fading world, observing its beauty and flaws with a keen, melancholic, critical eye. His personal contradictions come full circle into his art. So poignant, universal resonant.
And there's that scene in The Leopard, iconic, etched into cinema history, the mesmerizing, almost overwhelming 45-minute ballroom scene. Not just spectacle, it's a microcosm of the film, maybe of Visconti's vision itself.
Ah, the ballroom scene. Not just a sequence, it's a cinematic symphony. Dazzling choreography, exquisite costumes, profound, understated emotion. Technically, a marvel staging, lighting, camera movement. Visconti used incredibly long takes, sweeping across the opulent Bao del Gattopardo, immersing you, almost like a guest among the hundreds of extras.
You feel like you're there.
Observing the intricate social dance. Every detail meticulously to Palazzo's architecture, shimmering silk gowns, glinting metals, waltz choreography, subtle, weary expressions. The camera, an omniscient observer, revealing both dazzling surface and melancholic undercurrents.
An entire world within the film, and like you said, not just spectacle, a powerful, almost philosophical summation, encapsulating themes of opulence, beauty, loss, time's march, the poignant end of an era.
Absolutely. It starts with vibrant energy, peak aristocratic ritual, glamour. But as the night progresses, weariness, decay, resignation sets in, palpable in Lancaster's magnificent prints. He moves through observing family, society, dances, feeling history's weight, his mortality.
Watching the future unfold.
Sees the young generation nephew Tancredi dancing with the beautiful, newly rich Angelica, and understands this is the future, consuming his own. A moment of profound melancholy masked by lavishness. Exquisite beauty, but the beauty of a world destined to vanish. A last, glorious flourish before the curtain falls. A masterclass in conveying deep resonance, philosophical depth through visual and dramatic spectacle.
Its power was undeniable. The Leopard deservedly won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, remains one of the greatest historical epics ever, cementing Visconti's place in world cinema history, a true high point.
A monumental achievement.
But his career, amazingly, didn't end there. Later years, after this magnum opus, his focus deepened even more. Themes of decay, fleeting beauty, time's passage, human melancholy. More introspective, philosophical, almost haunting films. He kept creating profound work right up until his death.
You see this vividly across a trio of later films, exquisitely blending that aristocratic aesthetic, operatic sensibility with profound philosophical inquiries. Less epic in scale than The Leopard, maybe, but just as grand emotionally and intellectually.
Let's start with Death in Venice, 1971. Challenging, brilliant adaptation of Thomas Mann's novella. Dirk Bogarde. Profoundly exploring obsession with youth, beauty, artistic creation, repressed desires, unforgettable for its lush, painterly cinematography, Venice in amber and decay, and the haunting, overwhelming use of Mahler's Adagio from the Fifth Symphony.
That combination, visual splendor, psychological intensity, auditory genius, makes Death in Venice so powerful, unsettling. The slow, languid pace, exquisite compositions of Venice, beautiful yet decaying, and Mahler's heartbreaking, soaring music. It functions almost as a character.
It really does.
Creates this atmosphere of intense longing, artistic crisis, the fatal pursuit of an unattainable ideal. Visconti knew Mahler's music, its melancholy and yearning, perfectly mirrored his protagonist Aschenbach's inner world. A masterclass in aestheticizing decay, showing beauty in desperate yearning, the tragedy of an unfulfilled life.
Then, 1973, Ludwig. Sprawling, lavish chronicle of Ludwig II, the Mad King of Bavaria. Delving into art, politics, obsession, isolation's weight. Continuing Visconti's fascination with grandiose figures clashing with political reality.
Ludwig perfectly extends that fascination. Historical figures trapped by aesthetic visions and unforgiving political power. A deep psychological dive into a monarch prioritizing beauty, art, fantastical castles over governance, leading to his tragic downfall. Madness.
Another complex figure.
Visconti explores Ludwig's love for Wagner, his pathological pursuit of idealized beauty, his inability to connect with the mundane, another powerful example of using history to explore timeless themes, identity, leadership's burden, the conflict between artistic idealism and worldly demands. He found in Ludwig a reflection of his own sensibilities, but tragically amplified.
And finally, his penultimate film, Conversation Piece, 1974, again starring Burt Lancaster, but very different, intimate role. Quieter, melancholic, almost a chamber piece, reflecting on aging, change, generational clash, searching for meaning later in life. These later films truly were more reflective, melancholic, deeply operatic, showcasing how he kept combining his aesthetic with profound philosophical themes, increasingly personal.
Absolutely. They showcase a filmmaker who, having explored history's grand sweep, social changes, seismic shifts, turned his gaze inward. Meditations on personal decline, meeting in a changing world, memory's bittersweet nature, regret, enduring beauty. The operatic quality, by then fully integrated, lent emotional intensity, visual splendor, even to intimate narratives. Crafting worlds outwardly magnificent, inwardly tormented, consistently exploring beauty and decay, the human spirit's struggle against the inevitable.
So if we try to distill it all down, after this incredible journey, what truly defines Luchino Visconti's signature style, the key interwoven elements of his unique vision? What sets him apart?
Well, several defining elements coalesce. First, his unparalleled ability for historical sweep with intimate detail, balancing grand narratives, huge casts, vistas, with intensely personal, psychological human stories.
Masterful balance.
Then, the undeniable operatic grandeur. From his love of theater, opera, evident in the meticulous visual splendor, dramatic pacing, emotional crescendos.
And crucially, that date political engagement we discussed, a consistent thread rooted in his Marxism, always providing social commentary, a critical undercurrent beneath the beauty.
Absolutely. That political undercurrent is intrinsic, always there, whether depicting Sicilian fishermen or Italian princes, gives his films an intellectual backbone, coupled with his distinctive visual opulence, especially in color films like The Leopard, Death in Venice, lavish, meticulously crafted, unforgettable aesthetic.
And those recurring themes.
Yes, the beauty and sorrow of decay, the tragedy of class decline, the exquisite, fragile nature of beauty facing time. Woven into almost everything, giving his work resonant continuity.
What truly makes him unique, though, is bridging those seemingly different worlds. Stark neorealism and opulent historical epics. Almost unheard of for one director to master both extremes with such authority.
It's truly, utterly remarkable. Few directors in history have the artistic skill, intellectual flexibility, sheer courage to traverse such disparate cinematic territories. To go from the raw truth of Ossessione, La Terra Trema, capturing struggle with documentary precision, to the choreographed grandeur of The Leopard, or the psychological depth of Death in Venice.
It speaks volumes.
It speaks to a mind seeing connections where others saw divisions. This ability to move seamlessly between radical realism and opulent melodrama, maintaining a consistent theme, distinct authorial voice that solidifies his place as singular, irreplaceable. He proved a filmmaker could be both sharp social critic and dazzling visual artist, understanding the human condition in its harshest realities and its most sublime, decaying beauty.
So let's talk about that lasting impact. Not just important then. His influence echoes today, shaping generations. He was, without doubt, a founding father of Italian Neorealism, inspiring De Sica, Rossellini, Fellini, countless others.
His approach fundamentally changed screen storytelling, showed cinema could be a mirror to society's realities, a tool for social inquiry, not just escapist fantasy. Showed authentic emotion, compelling drama could emerge from ordinary lives, real streets, without studio artifice. That lesson's been absorbed worldwide, foundational for social realism, influencing everything from French New Wave to contemporary indie cinema.
And his later historical epics, Grandeur plus psychological depth, left an equally indelible mark too, right? You see his influence on Scorsese, meticulous historical recreation, Coppola's family sagas, and his protege, Bertolucci, who took Visconti's themes of class, history, spectacle further in films like 1900.
Absolutely. His blend of historical accuracy, psychological depth, breathtaking visual splendor provided a new model for epic filmmaking. Showed grand historical narratives could be intellectually rigorous, emotionally resonant, not just empty spectacle. Directors learned how to imbue history with lived experience, political complexity, thematic weight. Proving history on screen could be entertaining and thoughtful. He elevated historical drama from costume parade to incisive social commentary.
Ultimately, Visconti's remarkable ability to combine sharp social critique with breathtaking artistic beauty remains a powerful model. For filmmakers wanting meaningful, visually stunning cinema, you don't have to sacrifice one for the other. They can enrich each other.
That synthesis, integrating political conscience and aesthetic splendor, is perhaps his most enduring lesson, proving cinema could be aesthetically exquisite and intellectually challenging. A tool for profound entertainment and piercing social commentary, a delicate balance he mastered, inspiring artists globally.
Luchino Visconti died in 1976, but his films, his vision, his insights into the human condition, history's forces continue to resonate and inspire filmmakers worldwide. Remembered not just as pivotal Italian filmmaker, but a true European master, uniquely bridging cinema, opera, theater, history itself.
A true Renaissance man of the arts.
And really, his whole extraordinary story comes back full circle to this undeniable, fascinating power of contradiction. An aristocrat embracing Marxism, a near-realist pioneer becoming a master of opulent spectacle, equally comfortable with Sicilian fishermen and fading princes. His cinema, a profound journey, raw streets of Ossessione to breathtaking, melancholic grandeur of The Leopard, Death in Venice. Few filmmakers manage such range. Even fewer left such an indelible, complex, influential mark on world cinema history. And what an incredible, rich journey it's been today, exploring the unparalleled life and work of Luchino Visconti. His unique vision, capturing both reality's grit and history's sublime splendor, truly makes him indispensable, utterly essential in film history.
Indeed. What stands out to you, our listener, about how Visconti's intensely personal background, his aristocratic roots, his socialist convictions, so profoundly shaped and energized his art? And how might his timeless exploration of decaying beauty, the inevitable passage of time, still speak to contemporary concerns about change, loss, beauty's nature in our own rapidly evolving world? He gives us so much to reflect on, doesn't he? Far beyond just the films themselves.
Truly. We highly encourage you to seek out Visconti's magnificent filmography, experience his vision firsthand. Maybe start with The Leopard for that visual grandeur, the epic scope, or dive into Ossessione for the raw, revolutionary birth of a movement. Whichever you choose, you won't regret immersing yourself in the world of this extraordinary master. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Thank you.
And we look forward to exploring more fascinating corners of knowledge with you next time.